Denmark has long been regarded as one of the most desirable places to live, a true social utopia. Its high standards of education, free healthcare, excellent infrastructure, and strong government support turned it into a dream destination for thousands of migrants worldwide. However, recent developments have sharply shifted this perception. Once known for its openness and welcoming attitude, Denmark now imposes strict immigration policies. Instead of embracing newcomers, the country enforces tough laws, restrictions, and deportations. Once a symbol of tolerance, Denmark is now among the first in Europe to tighten its immigration rules. Public opinion has shifted dramatically, with many citizens demanding greater protections for their own homeland. What triggered this transformation? Was it rising crime, cultural clashes, economic pressures, or simply a political trend exploited by authorities? The result is clear. Denmark no longer feels like the familiar, inclusive society it once was. Currently, societal tensions are at an all-time high. The government responds by introducing more bans and restrictions aimed at prospective migrants. This shift began many years ago. In 2012, Denmark started revoking residence permits from Serbian refugees, claiming their safety at home was no longer at risk. By 2019, the country's stance on migration had changed even further. Officials explicitly stated that Denmark's primary concern was not integration, bringing migrants into Danish society and culture, but rather humanitarian aid, provided only temporarily until migrants could return home. This approach drew sharp criticism across the European Union and beyond, as many leaders worldwide viewed Denmark's policies as harsh and exclusionary. Traditionally, right-wing parties like the Alternative for Germany or France's National Rally tend to advocate strict immigration controls. Yet Denmark's government remained largely indifferent to political shifts between left and right. But what tangible measures have been introduced? Language proficiency has become a core requirement. Migrants must learn Danish, attend courses, and pass exams to demonstrate their skills. Furthermore, integration programs now mandate newcomers to familiarize themselves with Danish culture and traditions. Failing to meet these obligations incurs fines or even deportation. Social welfare benefits have also been cut, with authorities arguing that migrants should become financially independent more quickly. To prevent abuse, the government has intensified monitoring of how social payments are spent. So, why has Danish society's patience finally worn thin? Since the 1950s, Denmark's social welfare system, covering healthcare, education, cheap housing, and other benefits, has continuously expanded. The nation's generous safety net fostered a long period of social stability, but now it faces pressure from rising tensions and demographic changes. In sum, Denmark's once unshakable social model is transforming into a more cautious, restrictive society. The country's rise in immigration restrictions reflects not only concerns about safety and integration, but also a broader shift in national identity, driven by political, economic, and cultural anxieties that have accumulated over decades. During the mid-20th century, Denmark offered its citizens up to a year of parental leave, coupled with some of the most generous unemployment benefits worldwide. Despite economic struggles in the 70s, the country steadfastly maintained its reputation as a social welfare state, committed to ensuring the well-being of all its residents. For many years, Denmark ranked among the happiest countries globally, a reputation bolstered by high living standards and comprehensive social support systems. Starting in the 80s, migrants began arriving in significant numbers, and for a time, they coexisted peacefully with the native population. This seemingly beneficial arrangement allowed migrants to find employment and live securely, while the country gained additional labor force and tax revenue. It appeared to be a mutually advantageous strategy, an economic win-win that benefited both sides. However, significant changes ensued. Today, Denmark remains one of the wealthiest nations, with an average income ranging from about $50,000 to $30,000 annually. The Danish model builds upon principles of universal prosperity, providing free education, healthcare, and substantial social benefits funded through high taxes, averaging almost 46% of personal income. While this extensive welfare system supports social equality, it heavily relies on everyone contributing their share. Problems arose as the number of migrants increased, particularly those receiving benefits but earning substantially less than native Danes. For instance, male migrants from various countries earn nearly half as much as Danish men, and their savings are proportionally lower. Elderly migrant savings are 8 times less than those of native citizens. If such disparities were limited to the first generation, the situation might be explainable, but these trends have persisted for decades. Official reports reveal that migrants collectively contribute less tax revenue than they receive, threatening the system's sustainability. Recent years saw a rise in migration, further increasing Denmark's population, with migrants, mainly from non-Western nations, comprising over 8% of the total population by 2014. Salaries among migrants from regions like Asia and Africa tend to be lower than those of native Danes, gradually creating an economic imbalance. This disparity has led to a significant deficit. While native Danes contributed roughly 41 billion Danish kroner to the economy, migrants generated a net negative contribution of approximately 24 billion kroner. Practically, this means the state has invested more in migrants than it has gained from them. Such imbalances threaten the very foundation of the welfare system, which places the heaviest tax burden on the shoulders of the wealthiest and middle class. Currently, migrants primarily benefit from Denmark's social safety net, a situation that, while initially aligned with ideals of equality and prosperity, has become a growing financial challenge. The most pressing issue has turned out to be poverty among migrants, with about 30 to 60% of their children living below the poverty line. In contrast, only around 2% of native Danish children face such hardships. Poverty, in turn, fuels increased crime rates, posing a serious social risk. Research indicates that the murder rate in impoverished neighborhoods is nearly 6 times higher than in wealthier areas. For example, in neighboring Sweden, firearm-related crimes have surged over the past decade to such an extent that the country now ranks second in Europe for this type of violence. Similar trends are emerging in Denmark, where statistics reveal that residents originating from Middle Eastern and North African countries face higher crime rates than native Danes, even when age and gender are taken into account. This escalating threat of parallel communities has prompted government intervention. In 2018, Denmark launched a comprehensive program aimed at combating poverty and reducing crime among migrants. Central to this initiative is the requirement for children from non-Western families to attend preschools, where they are taught Danish language and cultural norms. Failure to comply results in reduced social benefits for their families. Authorities also proposed relocating migrant families to different cities to evenly distribute demands on local infrastructure and strengthen surveillance in high-crime areas. Penalties for violations have been tightened, and children of migrants are now offered mandatory courses in Danish language and culture from early childhood. In neighborhoods with a majority migrant population, often labeled ghettos, the government routinely demolishes public housing to attract more affluent residents. By 2030, the goal is to ensure that no more than 30% of such districts' inhabitants are from non-Western backgrounds. These measures have sparked protests, with critics arguing that instead of integrating migrants into society, they risk deepening segregation. They warn that such policies might exacerbate tensions and foster feelings of forced relocation, potentially backfiring over the long term. In response, authorities have shifted terminology from ghetto to parallel society, though the essence of reforms remains unchanged. Beyond internal adjustments, Denmark is also taking steps to curb annual migrant inflows. Part of the strategy involves negotiating agreements with countries outside the European Union, located along major migration routes, compelling them to accept more refugees. Last year, Denmark abandoned plans to outsource asylum processing to Rwanda, but continues to explore partnerships with non-European nations such as Albania and Turkey to host migrants. This approach closely resembles the UK's policy of deporting refugees to Rwanda, a plan enacted in April 2024 but soon cancelled after a change in government following recent elections. Public opinion in Denmark regarding these developments is mixed. Most citizens support stricter immigration policies, believing such measures are necessary to maintain stability and safeguard their way of life. However, there are also critics who argue that these policies may further marginalize migrants, increase social divides, and foster resentment among local populations. Some argue that such measures contradict Denmark's long-standing values of tolerance and openness. The younger generation in particular advocates for a softer approach to immigration, believing that cultural diversity enriches society. In response, protests have erupted in Copenhagen and other cities as young residents rally against new government policies, labeling the laws as discriminatory and akin to Russian restrictions. Protesters have raised banners asking, "Our apartments aren't for sale, so what's next?" And the tension continues to intensify. Denmark is pushing for stricter immigration policies across the European Union, urging other member states to limit migrant arrivals. It also advocates for agreements with non-European nations to accept more refugees. Historically, Denmark and Sweden gained a reputation for generous social support, making them attractive destinations for migrants hopeful of robust state aid in relocation and integration. Over time, however, increasingly more migrants have preferred Sweden, which is perceived as more welcoming and tolerant. Meanwhile, Denmark, inspired by Sweden's more lenient stance, is steadily tightening its migration laws and shows no signs of easing these restrictions. This approach is controversial. Some see it as necessary for preserving national identity and stability, while others question whether stricter laws are the only solution. Ultimately, Denmark's decision reflects a broader global trend, where each nation addresses migration through its own lens. While some believe tougher laws are justified, others argue that there are alternative ways to manage migration without compromising core values. The question remains open. Is this a rightful course of action, or could simpler, more inclusive solutions be more effective? What is your opinion? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments.